So, Tom, we've got one big story that I want to cover this week, and that is Aruba Atmosphere. You were at this conference. You learned quite a lot. We did some amazing Tech Field Day presentations and discussions. We've got some coverage coming out, even a roundtable discussion coming up. So, let's dive into Aruba Atmosphere here as our top story. Aruba was the talk of the town, and we're here to cover some of the exciting announcements from this event. There were a lot of discussion about the integration of Aruba, now known as HPE Aruba Networking, into the wider HPE company portfolio. But the wireless fans were not disappointed. They had a lot to cheer about with the new updates to Aruba Central that has better visibility and integration with HPE GreenLake. Security experts love seeing the acquisition of Axis Security and how that's providing new edge security capabilities. And of course, the Athonet acquisition extends private 5G capabilities, which is a really hot topic in the industry right now. Tom, since you were there and you paid attention and learned so much there, why don't you give us a little tour of Aruba Atmosphere?
So I'm going to start off with the part I thought was the most interesting to me, which was the security aspect of things. And you're probably thinking, well, wait, it's Aruba. Why are you talking about security? Because that's a piece that they've needed for a very long time. And so you think about the fact that they developed their SD branch technology and it relied on ClearPass, and it worked for certain sizes. And then they went out and they bought Silver Peak. And we've worked with Silver Peak in the past, so we've seen their technology. And David Hughes is really smart. He built a great company. It really complemented what they needed from an SD-WAN perspective. And then later, SASE. But SASE isn't the only game in town anymore. SSE is really starting to come into its own, and that maturity in that software stack was absolutely necessary. And so that's where we started to see the integration of Axis Security. And that was a pickup that they announced. We talked about it here on the rundown earlier this year. There is a lot of great opportunity there because it doesn't rely on hardware. It's all software focused. In fact, they had some of the executives from Axis on stage on the second day keynote to kind of talk about what they're doing with it and how they're going to be using it to work with. Now they're calling it Edge Connect SSE. And so I've been kind of following this for a little bit, and I think that there's a lot of potential here. Not only that, but I've also heard Aruba employees talking about the fact that they're waiting for this Axis technology, the Edge Connect SSE, to be rolled out to their corporate devices. I mean, that's one of those things that you expect to see. The company is using their own solutions to fix these issues and to protect their devices. So I'm very excited about this. We actually had a session in the Tech Field Day Extra, or I'm sorry, the Networking Field Day exclusive offering that we did, and it was just jam packed with information, like literally jam packed. The guy was 45 minutes was not enough for him to be able to present. So if you want to learn a little bit more about that, go to our YouTube channel, youtube.com/techfieldday, and just look for the Aruba Atmosphere Edge Connect presentation. You won't be disappointed. Stephen, one of the other big things that came out of this was Aruba Central. It's getting a little bit of a redesign. But since it involves HPE GreenLake, I was wondering if you could kind of give us a little bit of perspective on this, because this is really something that you've been following a lot, this HPE transition to GreenLake.
Absolutely. And first off, those of you who, I don't know, living under a rock or something, GreenLake is a tremendously popular offering from HPE that basically converts everything they sell into as a service offerings. And it does it in a way that's really found a great uptake with HPE's customers and new customers. It's frankly an excellent as a service offering from a legacy hardware vendor, and a lot of the other companies in the industry have been following them. The same can be said of Aruba Central, which is their overall orchestration and management platform. I've heard it said that Central was one of the key assets that HPE was after when they bought Aruba. And frankly, the improvements that have been made to Central over the years have been really eye-opening. Of course, it's 2023, so we can't not talk about AI. And that's pretty much the big deal with Aruba Central. They have added AI ops all over the place. They have really done a lot to improve it. They have integrated Aruba Central into HPE GreenLake, and they've come out with basically a leading as a service management platform that uses AI to do smart stuff. No, we're not talking about chatbots and nonsense like that. We're talking about using AI to sift through the straw and pull out the needles. We're talking about using AI to improve overall management, improve the capabilities of the platform, and do powerful things. I don't think that I can really do it justice by talking about it in too much depth because, frankly, I'm not in the networking space as much as I am in the AI space. But what I can say is that if you check out the Aruba presentation from their Tech Field Day session, you'll see quite a lot there about Aruba Central. And I think you'll come away pretty impressed. Tom, this is a tool basically meant to benefit folks like yourself. Did you see the same thing I saw?
Oh, I absolutely did. There was so much excitement about the Central, not only the redesign, but the fact that it kind of runs in GreenLake, which means it can run either in the cloud or on-prem. And a lot of companies are still trying to figure out where they want that to happen. And this gives you a lot of flexibility to do that. Some people had referred to the Aruba Central interface as being, tired, old. But just some of the stuff that they were showing off, the ability that it gives you to drill down into things, to be able to create automations and orchestrations based on business policies and things like that. It gives your operations teams a lot of incentives to want to automate these tasks, to pull people out of the loop so that you're not constantly fighting little fires. You can focus on more of the strategic kind of deployments and things like that that ultimately lead to more I don't know, happy operations teams, maybe less stressed would be a better way to put it. So I'm excited to see where this develops, and I know that with some of the people that we've had there are actually going to be covering some of their favorite parts of those announcements on gestaltit.com coming up very soon. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was literally everyone was buzzing about this was the acquisition of Athonet, which is a private 5G LTE provider in the that Aruba is picking up. And quite literally amongst our group of delegates that we had there for Networking Field Day Experience, every one of them wanted to know more about how they're going to be deploying private 5G radios. How is this going to work with Wi-Fi? And we've had a lot of discussion about this on our Gestalt IT on-premise IT podcast. We've had a lot of discussion about this in our Tech Field Day sessions. Is Wi-Fi going to be taken over by private 5G? Do they have a place where they can coexist? And one of the things we learned about this, the answer is absolutely yes. And you have to understand those challenges. You have to understand what you're doing. And that's what Aruba is really trying to bring to the front here is we talked to people like Stuart Strickland of Aruba about what they're trying to do. And part of it is, and Stuart just flat out said this, they don't want to have some other organization being in the middle of that discussion when it comes to deploying these radios for people. Aruba wants to work directly with the customer to like stadiums, warehouses, challenging RF environments where the need to operate outside of an unlicensed spectrum band is critical. Like that's what they're trying to do. IoT devices, like they're quickly becoming capable of running these things, stuff that you wouldn't even expect, like those little hand scanners that you use to take inventory, things that are the bane of existence of all your wireless teams. If you go ask your wireless engineers anything about one of those old hand scanners, you can just literally see like the hackles being raised because they're so messy. But with private 5G, they're no longer a concern. And so I think that that's where a lot of this excitement is. Now, we must preface this by saying that the acquisition hasn't closed yet. So they're still kind of in that, phase of where they have to kind of treat it like it could potentially not happen, but we all know it's going to happen. So that's why I'm kind of excited to see where this is going. And like I said, we've talked about Central, we've talked about security, we've talked about the fact that it's now HPE Aruba Networking. It's no longer just Aruba, because HPE is trying to integrate this a little bit more closely into the fold. And Stephen, I wanted to get your take on that because we've seen how HPE has kind of acquired companies over the years, SimpliVity, Nimble Storage, other places, and they were integrated into HPE quickly, whereas Aruba seems to have a different kind of a goodwill with the community, and that brand has survived for a long time. But we're starting to see the beginnings of, oh, well, maybe we need to integrate this into the HPE fold a little closer. Do you think that that is HPE trying to get some of Aruba's goodwill, or is that Aruba finally realizing that there's more value in the HPE name than they might have realized?
I think it's kind of a combination of both. I will say that I was at Aruba Atmosphere last year, and I there was some buzz in the audience about, oh, it's the end of Aruba and this is sad. I don't think we saw that as much this year. In fact, I think this year, I think people are kind of starting to come around to it and say, wait a second, maybe it's not so bad. You know, with assets like GreenLake, with a lot of these other acquisitions that they're making, maybe they are actually strengthening Aruba and not weakening it. And I think that that's a trend that's going to continue. I mean, it was clear that HPE was not going to run this as sort of a federation of independent companies. Aruba was going to be integrated within the HPE family at some point. The fact that the name and the independent spirit of Aruba has survived this long, I think says something about how HPE sees this company and sees this community. And like I said, it's really not all bad. It's easy to criticize when acquisitions happen. It's much harder to make them happen in a smooth way that brings those customers along and exposes them to a broader portfolio. And I think that's exactly what's happening. You mentioned a number of other companies there that are being integrated into HPE, that are working with HPE, and that are being integrated into this story. And I like the idea, frankly, of Aruba networking being a flavor of Hewlett Packard Enterprise, and Aruba networking being a market for Hewlett Packard Enterprise to sell into. And I think that that's sort of what I'm seeing as the evolution of this brand. And I, applaud them for it. It's not an easy task, especially at a huge organization like HPE. It's not an easy task when you have so many dedicated fans. I mean, Aruba had really fanatical fans and following. It's would be very easy to just drive this thing into a wall, but that is not what's happened here. And I'm pretty happy with the overall vibe of what we're seeing this year. Now, next year, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that this integration is going to continue. Aruba, again, is going to be an aspect. Aruba networking is an aspect of HPE. It's a market for HPE, and it's a home for networking products. And I think that that's what it's going to look like in 2024 and beyond.